feels that way all the time.
How much, if you looked at where Dave Aranda is on the respect level as a head coach, not as a defensive mind or defensive coordinator, in a matter of a year, how much has he vaulted up the charts of head coaches, in your opinion?
Well, very quickly, right? Yeah, I mean, it's. I think everybody had. You mentioned it there. Everybody had respect for Dave Aranda as a defensive coordinator and a defensive mind. I think there was some real, and I think I've said it on your show before, I think there was some real doubt that Dave Aranda could be a head coach in a successful head coach, be that guy that, removes, is not in the dark room drawing up plays where he's known to be so good, but maybe somewhere where he's not often thought of in the spotlight at the podium, recruiting and all that stuff. But, and I met with him back in March. I visited Waco and I met with him and some of the staff. And it's pretty incredible kind of the metamorphosis that he's made. I mean, he hasn't changed completely. He still is uncomfortable at times, I think, in those settings, but he knows it's part of it. And I think he's used his strengths to kind of lift up, so to speak, his weaknesses. And it's been fairly remarkable to watch. And obviously the season they had this past year, and I covered the Big 12 championship game, it was incredible. And just the whole run, it was fun to watch. And for a guy like Dave Aranda, as I wrote from that Big 12 championship game, Dave and I met in the locker room just for a few minutes after that game and just talking through about the times that, he's got, a lot of coaches have stories of coming from the bottom, and reaching kind of the summit, a Power 5 conference championship as a head coach. But man, Dave really has an incredible story that goes back to his days, getting fired at 2 or 3 places, being stuck on Hawaii as a fired coach, and maybe even thinking about going to the high school level. All that was just like 13, 14 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. So it's an incredible story.
Ross, I'm looking forward to asking Dave about this the next time we talk to him. He clearly was adverse to the spotlight, but as you just explained, he had to kind of get used to it. Now that he's been under it and, at a pretty high level, obviously, do you think he's found himself enjoying it, or do you think he's still as adverse to that spotlight as ever before?
Oh, I think he's uncomfortable. I wouldn't say averse as much, but I do think it's still uncomfortable for him, and he just has to. I think he has to. He's learned at least how to get used to the uncomfortable, get comfortable with the uncomfortable, so to speak. And I think that's how it has to be. We talked in March, and I haven't been so kind of inundated with a lot, as we talked about earlier, a lot of the off the field stuff that I haven't even written the story. But when we sat down, I mean, he gave some just really compelling quotes about how all the difficulties he had socially, just speaking to people, and I think he still does have those difficulties, but he's overcome some of that, and I think his wife has about that. His wife's kind of the opposite of him in a lot of those regards. So she's helped him a lot at Dion, and I think people around him, assistants and stuff, kind of taking up the mantle, so to speak, on some of that as well. But I do think he's still made uncomfortable by it, but he knows it's part of it, and I think he's crossed a lot of hurdles.
Yeah, it is interesting, though, Ross, to see in kind of an era now because of social media and everything you have to do. Brian Kelly's got to do videos dancing with guys, all those things you have to do. I'm not trying to knock Brian Kelly, but it is such a different thing. It's where Dave Aranda, if you asked him to do a video dancing with somebody, he'd be like, absolutely no, that's not. We'll take a still photo by the picture of the Big 12 championship. That's good enough for me, and that stuff just doesn't register with him.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I can't imagine Dave doing any dancing whether it's to get a recruit or, personally at somebody's wedding or something. I just can't, be the furthest thing that would happen, I think, is Dave Aranda on the dance floor. But it's you can, I think Dave probably is proving in, he has, certainly there's just a 2-year sample size here, but he's proving that you can do it. You can be a head coach at a major conference team despite having some hurdles that you have to overcome in the personal kind of social environment. But it's been impressive to see what he's done at Baylor, and I'm sure what he'll continue to do.
Ross, off the field, there's